The man accused of executing 4 family members before going on a week-long manhunt in Tennessee was back in court, and we learned some shocking new information about Austin Drummond.
Approximately 11 times.
I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. Please. Please. Please, please.
The courtroom outburst after new details came out about the murders. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Stewart. Austin Drummond, since being arrested, has tried to argue that he's not the person who executed 4 members of his girlfriend's family in rural Tennessee at the end of July, then going on a week-long manhunt and abandoning a baby on a stranger's front lawn. Here's video of Drummond entering the courtroom in Lake County, Tennessee for a probable cause hearing on Thursday. Drummond is facing 4 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, among other charges. The state has said they're going for the death penalty in this case. 5 members of law enforcement laid out evidence in this hearing, and during the hearing, Drummond sat there showing little emotion. Now, before I get into the difficult moment I showed you there at the top, it caused an outburst in the courtroom, let me remind you how we got here. Let's go back to July 29th in Dyer County, Tennessee, in the western part of the state. This began for law enforcement when they received a 911 call from a homeowner who said he found a baby on his front lawn. That child's safe. The baby was actually still in her car seat, and she was found around 3 o'clock in the afternoon that day. It wasn't until 5 hours later that law enforcement found 4 bodies down a wooded road in Lake County, Tennessee, about 45 minutes north of where the baby was found. This is video per journalist Burton Staggs of the scene. The bodies of Courtney Rose, Matthew Wilson, Adriana Williams, and Braden Williams were all found. They were shot. And I'll get more into the details related to that we learned in this hearing in just a moment. Braden, who you see at the bottom there, was just 15 years old. He was the uncle of the baby found in the front yard. The parents of the baby, they were also found dead, Matthew Wilson and Adriana Williams. Courtney Rose was the maternal grandmother of that child. She too was dead. Not long after that discovery, police say they had a suspect, and his name was Austin Drummond. He was a convicted felon who was considered armed and dangerous. Now, we learned a lot about how law enforcement traced their case to Drummond in this hearing, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Drummond, you might remember, was on the run for roughly a week, and this put Tennessee and even surrounding states on edge, especially after this video came to light of him armed with a gun in the middle of the night in Jackson, Tennessee, trying to get into a church. Now, it was on Tuesday, August 6th in the morning. There was a crew working on a home in Jackson, Tennessee, and they spotted Austin Drummond in the woods. Drummond wasn't armed at the time he was arrested. He has been in custody since his arrest, and this week we saw him in court once again, in person for a preliminary hearing, and this is how the judge set the stage in the courtroom.
Just to go over with everyone, we're going to have some statements and some evidence that may be entered today that may be difficult to hear, may be upsetting to hear. If at any time you feel that you cannot sit and listen to the proceedings, I would ask that you step outside. If anyone does have to step outside, that's fine. I don't mind that. If a disruption is made, then you will be removed from the courtroom. And if further disruptions are made, the court has the right to hold you in contempt of court, or the sheriff's office has the right to issue charges for disorderly conduct. I don't want to see that happen.
5 members of law enforcement took the stand during this hearing. They range from a local park ranger to a special agent with the FBI. Investigators showed surveillance video of multiple vehicles that they traced to the victims and the crime scene, and how it pieced together a timeline for these murders.
We worked off a theory due to many of the victims arriving at the scene where they were murdered at various times, right? So they didn't all just appear there together.
Law enforcement also analyzed the cell phone data of the people involved to put together a timeline.
Another thing that we do when we're working these investigations is try to determine when the victims' phones stop taking calls, right? We're trying to work on a timeline. We're trying to narrow everything down so that our cell phone data is strong as possible. We noticed from the 4 victims' phones that none of the victims answered a call or made a call after 7:01 a.m.
Part of the reason law enforcement focused on Drummond was because they identified a rental car they say that someone rented for Austin Drummond.
Due to some good work performed previously, there was a Nissan Rogue that had been identified that had been rented in Jackson, Tennessee the day before and picked up on the morning of the homicide. This vehicle was captured on license plate readers going northbound towards the crime scene and then going southbound away from the crime scene at a time later in the afternoon. In addition, there was some identification of the vehicle from a park ranger being seen at the location. The investigative team followed up with the rental agreement and with Enterprise Rental Car to learn about the who had rented this vehicle and identified a Michelle Ovelis, I may not pronounce the last name correctly, Ovelis, as being the renter. As that investigation continued, she had identified that the vehicle had been given to Austin Drummond and rented on Austin Drummond's behalf.
Okay. And did she have any connection to the defendant, Mr. Drummond?
Her boyfriend, Giovante Thomas, was closely associated with Austin, and she was also closely associated with an individual named Tanaka Brown. Our phone toll analysis identified that at 7:25, as that number 731-345-7426 was leaving the crime scene, it was jumping on a three-way conference call with Tanaka Brown and Giovante Thomas.
Okay. And then what happened next?
So, obviously at this point, we were extremely interested in just learning everything we can about the user of this telephone number. We learned that upon departing the crime scene, it traveled to an area in Dyersburg commonly known as Bikini Bottoms. Bikini Bottoms used to be like an off-road recreation vehicle area for ATVs and such. When the phone arrived, and a point of interest, as this phone is traveling south towards Bikini Bottom, one of the victim's phones is traveling in concert with that phone, so that was very interesting to us as well. Both of those phones got to the Bikini Bottom area, and the phone 731-345-7426 arrived at Bikini Bottom at approximately 7:44 a.m. and stayed in the area to approximately 9:04 a.m. Based on what we do with violent crime investigations and the knowledge base that we have, we theorize that something as far as getting rid of evidence or weapons or something had happened at that Bikini Bottom area.
And in fact, did it?
It did. There was, based on the phone data and the investigation in whole, search parties were organized to go to Bikini Bottom. On the day that these phone tolls were being worked, they initially found a Tennessee driver's license for Matthew Wilson, and the next day we found Mr. Wilson's vehicle down a ravine there at Bikini Bottom.
And that's the late 80s F-150 truck?
Yes, sir.
Did 7426 stay at Bikini Bottom?
It stayed there till about 9:04 a.m., and then it began a southeastwardly travel towards Jackson, Tennessee.
Okay. And did it eventually reach Jackson?
It did.
Do you remember, do you know what time?
I'll refer to my notes for a more specific time. We saw it arriving in the Jackson, Tennessee area at approximately 10:04 a.m.
Okay. And where did the phone go while it was in Jackson?
The phone first travels to an area consistent with the Clarion Hotel in Jackson, Tennessee. It then moves towards the Cherry Grove Apartments, and then eventually towards back up towards Dyersburg.
Okay. Let's stay in Jackson for a minute. Was there any significance to the Clarion Hotel?
Through the investigation, the Clarion was identified as a place where Austin Drummond resided regularly and potentially used as a place to organize criminal activity.
And was his vehicle at the Clarion?
The information from the investigation is that his personal vehicle, the Audi, was at the Clarion. Mr. Tanaka Brown who picked him up at Bikini Bottom, drove him back to his vehicle at the Clarion, and then followed him to Cherry Grove to depart, to leave the Audi sedan.
Okay. Was there any significance to the Cherry Grove apartments?
Cherry Grove Apartments is where Mr. Drummond's girlfriend, Caitlin Speed, resided. The investigation revealed that when his vehicle was departed at the Cherry Grove apartment complex, that he ascertained some cleaning style brushes at the apartment.
Okay. And then you said after that it starts moving back north towards Dyersburg?
There's a little time with it still being in Jackson, but by 11:55 a.m., the phone began a northwestern travel towards Bells, Tennessee.
And then it reaches Dyersburg?
We have the phone in conjunction with the license plate readers being in Dyersburg at 12:39 p.m. and by 1:04 p.m. being back north of Tiptonville near the crime scene.
So this is the first time that we're hearing law enforcement lay out what they say was the help that Austin Drummond allegedly received after the murders, even going on a three-way call right after those murders allegedly happened with people who now, by the way, are facing charges because of it. We have been following this story from the very beginning, and one of the tools that we use to help us learn more about Austin Drummond as soon as he was named as a person of interest is TruthFinder.com. At Law&Crime, we partner with TruthFinder, and we use it to get details on the people involved in our stories. But even if you don't work in true crime, it can be a great resource to give you some peace of mind, as it is one of the largest public records search services in the United States. And with the paid subscription service, you get access to unlimited reports about almost anyone. And right now, you can get 50% off your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/OTC. The next witness was an investigator with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. This is the agent who is leading this case, and this is where the testimony in the courtroom got graphic, especially as he was explaining what he saw when he arrived on the crime scene in Lake County that day.
Once we got out there, I saw the black Charger that was known to be driven by Braden Williams, 15-year-old child, and a white Traverse that was known to be driven by Courtney Rose.
Was anyone inside the vehicles?
They were not.
Okay. What'd you do after locating those vehicles?
We had Deputy Hunter Brady walk us around the scene as to what he had discovered whenever he first came upon the scene. And he showed us inside of the white Traverse, there was a red, brownish stains substances that are consistent with what I know to be blood. And then he showed us.
Let me ask you this. Do you know who that white Traverse belonged to?
It was known to be driven by Courtney Rose.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And if you drive down Carrington Road, to the left where it kind of comes to a dead end, it's almost like a parking lot where these vehicles were parked. Behind that is whenever you start walking into the woods, same as what the deputy before was talking about. If you cross the road, you have wooded area in front of you. So the deputy took us to the back of the parking lot and showed us where Braden Williams and Miss Courtney Rose were laying. They were covered with what looked like to be camouflage burlap, which is commonly used with hunting that I know of. And then he walked us in front of the parking lot across the road where the bodies of Adriana Williams and Matthew Wilson were at, and they were also covered with the same type of burlap.
Were you able to, were they all four deceased?
They were.
That you arrived?
Yes, sir.
Were you able to determine the cause of death at that time? Or
They-
what, not a medical cause, but what appeared to be?
The injuries were consistent with gunshot wounds that all four victims had.
Were you able to determine how many gunshot wounds there were?
Not at the time.
Were you able to at a later time?
Yes, whenever the medical examiner out of Nashville called me with preliminary findings, he informed me of how many wounds and type of wounds that each victim had.
What type of wounds did Courtney Rose have?
She had been shot in the head.
How many times?
at least once that I remember.
Okay. What about Braden Williams?
He had been shot in the back of the head.
What about Adriana Williams?
She had also been shot in the head.
And what about Matthew Wilson?
Mr. Wilson had been shot in multiple places in his body for approximately 11 times.
I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. Please, please, please help me. Please.
At that moment, there was a loved one in the courtroom who left. That testimony, as you can imagine, just too graphic to hear. The agent then got into how they identified Drummond as their suspect.
Were you eventually able to develop a suspect in these homicides?
They were a person of interest, yes.
And who was that?
Mr. Austin Drummond.
Did you see him in the courtroom today?
I do.
You identify him?
He's a gentleman sitting at the defense table in the inmate uniform.
Okay. After getting there, you said that there were two vehicles there. Did you get information that there may have been a third vehicle?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about that.
Drummond did not show emotion during this hearing. One of the key pieces of evidence in this case is a cell phone that victim Braden Williams, the 15-year-old, purchased at Walmart the day before his murder.
Were you able to determine where the phone came from?
The phone in question that Agent Scott
Yes.
Wilson. Dyer County Sheriff's Department had, whenever they gathered the video from Walmart the night before on the 28th, they also found, got a receipt from Walmart showing that a purchase by the victims of the burlap, the camouflage burlap, or similar camouflage burlap that was at the crime scene, along with the cell phone.
Sorry, General.
Do you recognize that?
This is the receipt I've seen, correct?
Drummond recently made a jailhouse phone call to a reporter with WTVF-TV in Nashville, and he claimed on that call that he was actually an informant working for law enforcement when he was in prison. That has not been proved. He had served a decade in prison on an aggravated assault conviction, and he claimed that he was helping law enforcement from the inside track down drugs and gang members in prison.
And I was afraid that because I was an informant, things would go wrong. Things would happen to me.
Not only is that a claim that, again, has not been proved, he also, in that phone call, did admit that he was on scene for those murders, and that could be a big blow for the defense. Now, this hearing lasts after those 5 agents gave testimony. This is what Drummond's defense attorney asked of the case agent from the TBI.
Did you have any involvement in processing the scene?
I did not.
All right, do you recall how many were any shell cases recovered?
There was.
Do you recall how many?
I did not. I was not told the number.
Do you know what type of cases were recovered?
So this is an area where people go out and target practice, from what I was told. I'm not from Lake County. There were a few different kinds of calibers out there. The violent crime response team leader, Special Agent Forensic Scientist Julian Conyers, I had a conversation with him, and he said the majority of the cartridge casings that was around the White Rogue were 45 caliber.
But there were multiple shell casings, multiple types of shell casings.
Multiple calibers of shell casings, correct. Cartridge casings.
Now, did you process the scene at all yourself?
I did not. We stepped back and called them.
Did they take photos, that sort of thing?
They take photos, they take measurements, they collect evidence, range.
Any video thing?
They usually do. I'm not sure on this one. So whenever they finish processing and they do all their evidence, all that, they will create what they call a crime scene investigation report with the photos and everything. That's still in the process.
So that's not completed, so
Last I checked this week, it was not completed yet.
typically TBI agents don't carry body cams like that. Did you have a body cam?
I did not.
So you could see the defense trying to poke a couple holes in the evidence that was presented during this hearing, but the judge said that there was enough probable cause for this case to move forward. In Tennessee, now it goes to a grand jury. And an interesting development that came out of this hearing as well was Drummond's defense attorney asking to lift a restraining order that is in place against Drummond's girlfriend. She is pregnant with Drummond's child. Her name is Caitlin Speed, and she is victim Courtney Rose's sister. The judge did rule against changing the order because Speed will likely be a witness in this case. Now, we wait and see what the grand jury decides. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.